Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Summerween series, celebrating hot weather and horror movies by bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of Abraxeon.
In this episode, we're talking about Deathstalker, a brand new fantasy horror remake of the 1983 cult classic. And this movie has some of the best practical effects since Evil Dead. We're very excited to talk about it. Let's get into it.
All right, Deathstalker. This was, I don't think we've had this much. I mean, it was a hoot and hollering great time at the movies.
A hoot and holler is the best way to describe this. It was so fun. Wow, I had a good time.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is, just to get the formalities out of the way, it's written and directed by Steven Kostanski, a remake of the 1983 original, which, judging by the pictures on IMDb, looks a lot less fun than this was. It was an hour and 42 minutes. And how would we describe the plot? Because I don't think you do it by describing the plot.
Okay.
I would say this is epic, high fantasy. This is old school fantasy.
Sword and sorcery,
exactly.
Like classic fantasy.
Practical effects, a lot of scrappy people in the woods. It's endlessly charming. There's big swords. There's a guy who has 4 swords in one at the end of the movie.
It's so great.
Big burly guy who's kind of sardonic. There's a little wizard. There's a thieves guild. There's dark magic. There's a cool witch. There's
a cool sexy lady.
A bunch of reanimated soldiers. There's really aggressive, fun color work. I mean, the way I would describe the plot of this movie is that every single frame of it could be the cover album, the cover work of an 80s metal band.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a guy trying to like break a curse from an amulet and then take down a big bad whose name is what? Necro-Norman or whatever?
Necromemnon.
Necro-Norman. Like it's so like classic and tropey and predictable, but it was so much fun. Like I missed that, I think.
Yes, exactly. And I was smiling through this film genuinely almost every single scene.
Yeah, it was delightful.
I've been feeling the fantasy itch, and I think this movie is I love when a movie is exactly what you need at the moment when you need it. We've been doing so much horror, which I've loved, but I think anytime we lean into one thing for a long time, I get antsy and want to do something else. And we haven't done fantasy since we wrapped up the Game of Thrones chapter by chapter series, which was in April. That was 6 months ago.
I know. If y'all haven't been with us very long, we started as a fantasy show. We started this show by reading chapter by chapter all of the Lord of the Rings. And then we did all of the Witcher series. And then we did the first Game of Thrones book. And now we're not doing that anymore. And so we really haven't been on the fantasy train. And I miss it. And this time of year especially.
Yes.
Like, obviously I love horror and like spooky season is the greatest. But half the reason I love autumn is because it also makes me in the mood for fantasy. Like, that's just the time. Like, autumn and winter is like prime fantasy times, and that's what I'm really missing right now.
And this was a perfect convergence of those things we love.
Totally.
Basically indie horror and high fantasy.
Yep, it is all together, and nothing was trying to subvert anything. Nothing was trying to like comment upon anything. It was just a good time. It was an adventure, and that's sometimes all fantasy needs to be.
And I think the best way of exploring our love for this film and this experience is through comps. It's through the comparison titles, the possible inspiration, or the things that we felt were influential on this work. And I want to start with, I was trying to come up with this during the movie, not in a distracted way, but I was realizing that there was a lot of Lord of the Rings here.
Sure.
I mean, I think a lot of the plot beats you hit with the wizard and the magical gold object that one person carries around that occasionally glows when enemies are near. And I feel like the little wizard guy kind of had a Gollum-ness to him.
Sure, yeah.
As this little companion. There was also a lot of Yoda in him, the way he was being carried on his back. So you're hitting a lot of these genre staples. I think there's as much Star Wars in here as there is Lord of the Rings, but once again, Star Wars is space fantasy more than it is sci-fi. So we're still talking within the realm of fantasy. But there's also a lot of Power Rangers in here. And this is my way of pitching this film specifically to you, Tristan. We still release these fucking podcasts at 6 a.m. because I know sometimes you listen to them when you're having breakfast. So if you are, and you watch Power Rangers growing up too, this is for you.
That's funny.
Because it was all the enemy soldiers. They were all red. There were all these big, stupid, ribbed, spiky costumes that they had on. And it reminded me of Power Rangers, where you have that low-budget, scrappy, practical fights with kind of a cheesy level of CG, like when the little wizard uses the magic I mean, it looks like shit, but
Yeah,
in a
it looks
great
ridiculous.
way.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The way the effects and costumes and sets are in this movie is, it all is kind of shitty, but it doesn't feel like it's them doing a bad job.
No.
It feels like a stylistic choice.
Exactly. It's tongue in cheek.
Yes.
It was
yes.
so, but I think you asked what the name of the villain was before. It's Necromemnon.
Yes.
And now, with that as the bridge, we have to talk about Evil Dead. Because as much as there was fucking Lord of the Rings in this thing, this is, and dispute me if you disagree with this claim, this is the first genuine successor to Army of Darkness I've ever seen.
I think that's so right. Have we talked about Army of Darkness
No.
on here? I don't think so. If you don't know, Army of Darkness is the third Evil Dead movie. And it is, instead of it like following, other things that happen with Ash in the cabin and shit with all the Deadites, it is instead him getting transported back to the Middle Ages and having to survive an army of skeletons with a shotgun. Like, it's so funny, and there's so much like high fantasy medieval / horror silliness in that movie, and it's a delightful
with
experience.
joyful tongue-in-cheek practical effects. And this had, just to rattle them off, the Necronomicon is the big
big book that you opened and
in
read.
Evil Dead.
Yep.
This had Necromemnon. You have the kind of stop motion fights with the skeletons in Army of Darkness. Here you have that, I mean, literally as like a chess match at the end of the movie.
Yes.
There was so much Evil Dead throughout this movie.
And there was, it wasn't just the skeletons, there was a lot of stop motion in this movie,
Yes.
which is what the original Evil Dead, I think, does so brilliantly, especially at the end of the movie. Like, the practical effects in Evil Dead, I think, are some of the most impressive and genre-defining and iconic things I've ever seen. And this movie is definitely standing on those shoulders.
You have a big burly alpha male lead who is constantly the butt of jokes, and it feels like the director is trying to kill him with all the things he puts him through.
Yes.
It's funny without being, maybe it's silly without being a comedy.
Right, because like Evil Dead 2, for example, is really more of a straight comedy,
Yeah.
and I enjoy Evil Dead 2, but the first Evil Dead has genuine moments of horror, like with comedy in it.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what this is, but it's fantasy with elements of horror and comedy in it.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because I don't think most people are describing this as a horror movie, but to me it clearly was.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's primarily, first and foremost, a fantasy adventure, but it's got so much horror in it. There's so much, like, in like the creature designs and all of the blood. And
It's
like,
an incredibly gnarly, gory film.
It's very gory.
It's like, it has Jimmy and Stiggs level blood sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a great indie horror movie we talked about a couple weeks back.
Yeah, that was fun.
And I think this speaks to kind of the kaleidoscopic indie horror obsession that we've had this year with things like Jimmy and Stiggs and The Toxic Avenger. I think this has a similar sensibility where it's horror in its excess and shock value, but it's primarily dealing with something else.
Yes.
Jimmy and Stiggs was doing sci-fi in the foreground. Toxic Avenger was doing this fantastic political commentary about the U.S. healthcare system in the foreground. And this is doing a kind of Lord of the Rings pastiche in the foreground.
Yeah, classic adventure fantasy story.
But the horror in the background is what makes it all work for me. That's
Yeah.
what pulls it all together. Because so much of fantasy is about battles. It's about fights. And most of these fights are one-on-one. It's like there's a two-headed, I don't remember what he called it.
I don't know what it is.
In the beginning of the movie. And it's very clearly a suit that they put some goo on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
Right.
And it's very funny. And so much of this movie is a kind of staccato series of encounters, I guess. Let's talk about the pacing for a moment.
It's not vignettes. It's sort of like mini adventures within the larger one, which also feels very like classic fantasy.
Exactly.
I really liked
it's
it.
episodic. There's always a bridge of him and the little wizard walking into the next plane, looking for the next adventure. Or it's him riding into a new town on a horse. And every one of those vignettes has killer, inventive creature design.
Yes.
There's such variety in all of these encounters. You get the swamp creature, you get the final boss, you get the guy with the arm that grows back, you get the stupid prince.
I love the prince.
Great, silly, fun creature design. Sometimes there are callbacks where the vignettes talk to each other, or some element that we abandoned 3 or 4 vignettes ago comes back. It really has structure to it. But I loved how episodic and fun and adventurous it felt. There were moments where this reminded me of that spark that everyone loved so much about the very, very beginning of The Mandalorian.
I know what you mean. Yeah, because it was like episodic adventure story, wasn't trying to get too complicated or too layered or trying to like redefine the genre of Star Wars. It was just like, let's play around in this and have fun for a little while.
Let's have fun with a guy who's cool as shit.
Yeah.
And the Deathstalker being his name, his
name is Deathstalker.
Unbelievably cool.
He's
but
so
also,
cool.
It's such a dry performance. Like, how would you compare this with what Bruce Campbell does in Evil Dead and Army of Darkness?
It's very different because Bruce Campbell is like so funny, and he knows he's funny, and it's just him taking L's the whole way through, and like that's why it's so funny. And he's like overconfident. Like, oh, what does he say to the woman? He says something.
The one-liners are crazy.
I don't know, but
Army of Darkness has some of the best one-liners ever put on screen.
He's a big flirt, right? And this guy, Deathstalker, is not really that. He's a bit more serious, but he's also very, very funny, and he's very confident, right? And he wants to do a good job. He wants to be a hero, but he's also kind of a loner. Like, it's very fun.
It's very dry, though. And I think that keeps it from being too much of a comedy.
Yeah, because there is a lot of comedy in this, and I think it was just tipping over the line of too much. I actually wish they had scaled back by about 0.5%.
I agree. There was a moment where a wizard sees a big thing coming at him and he just says, "What the fuck?"
He says, "What the fuck is that?" And I thought, and it made me laugh in the moment, but I was like, that didn't quite belong here.
And there wasn't that much banter here.
No.
I think that's something that Bruce Campbell is such an all-timer with that level of banter. There were a couple meta jokes, but not too much.
Yeah.
I was just on the edge of losing immersion, but even when it went a little too far, I was... And I don't mean that the jokes were like inappropriate. I just mean that
too funny.
The balance was a little off.
Yeah.
I was still immersed in having the best time.
Yes, absolutely.
To drill a little deeper into these comparison titles or these inspirations, we've talked about so many different flavors of fantasy in the course of doing this show for 5 years now. What did this remind you of the series that we've discussed, of the worlds that we've lived in?
Honestly, The Witcher. It reminded me a lot of The Witcher, and just like in its structure, because it's episodic, because so much of The Witcher early on is those short stories where it's just episodes of Geralt going to the next town and killing the next monster, and it turns out the real monster is the people in the town. Like that is so fun and classic. And of course, as the Witcher series goes on, as we discussed in our extensive discussions of that series,
all 8 books,
it was so much fun. It gets much more complex and layered and jaded and grimdark and pretty like serious and like devastating. And here it was more like just the fun parts of The Witcher. It's this one guy, he's going around, he's a little overpowered, he's got his big sword, he meets a lady who he has a complicated relationship with, and then she betrays him at one point, and he's got his funny sidekick character, and he's on his horse. Like, it felt very Witcher to me. And also just in that, we know the name of this place, Abraxan. We get some of the sense of the politics, but like not really. It's not all explained, and that's fine. And Sapkowski famously doesn't really explain what's going on in a lot of the larger political sphere. At least he only gives you just enough to understand this individual episode, but that's it. And that's kind of how it felt in this one too.
Light on its feet. I totally agree. I was hoping you would say that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Because
I was reminded of my favorite moments of The Witcher. When you view that series in its totality, I think it is the richest exploration of the effect, the motivational power of self-interest within human nature, I think, ever written. But if you take it on a more granular level by short stories or even by individual books, I think it's some of the most fun and interesting episodic fantasy work ever done.
Yeah.
And this did that second part. This did that more episodic part. I think you could have, there's very much a Geralt Dandelion influence here for me in kind of the dry humor that underpins a lot of the absurdity and brutality of the world.
Yes.
There's so much brutality in The Witcher, in the same way there's so much horror and gore here. I thought it struck a similar, vaguely European note.
Yeah, I mean, and even like when there's a moment in this movie where they come upon a village that's been like attacked and they're seeing all the carnage, that reminded me so much of what we saw in like Baptism of Fire and Tower of Swallows, where there's so Geralt and his whoever he's with at the time, he's so often coming upon like devastation and like what has happened, like because like the country is at war in both of these stories, and the tone is different, but like them coming upon the disaster really reminded me of The Witcher a lot.
I want to close on the note of just charm
Yeah.
Because I think charisma is something that's incredibly difficult to pin down. Like, what struck you as charming? What gave this film the charisma that we seem to both feel is so infectious here?
Well, I think it was in everything. Like, it was imbued in every part of it. It was in just like the tone of the movie overall, like in the script. It was in the pacing, where it was like, you know, fun and episodic, and we're moving from one thing to the next, and it's like exciting, but there's always the looming threat of what's his name in the back? I can't remember. Necromemnon. I keep wanting to say Necronomicon, obviously. But then it was also, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was the effects and the look of this movie. Like I said earlier, it all looks kind of bad, but it feels like an intentional stylistic choice. Like, the effects are impressive. You can tell a lot of thought and energy and time and money was put into these things. Like this, like the creature designs of the different, you know, monsters that he has to fight, the costumes, the practical effects for all the gore and like the weird like slime monster stuff, right? But it's also like the guy's wearing what looks like a polyester stretchy t-shirt that has the painted texture of leather on. Like, but you know that wasn't because they couldn't get a good leather top.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
It's
These
just
choices.
It's funny. Like, it's so funny. And everybody's wearing a wig that's a pretty good wig, but not a great wig. Like, you can tell it's a wig, but it's not, you know, a Party City wig, but it's not an HBO wig either. Like, it's very funny.
And the mask or the prosthetics that Doodad, the little wizard, is wearing. Like, his lips never touch.
No, you can tell. Wooden. It's just Patton Oswalt voiceover the whole time. But he's barely talking.
It's so funny. Like,
it is.
It's funny. And we go back to this example a lot, but it's funny in the same way Arrested Development is funny, where sometimes that lo-fi aesthetic, if you want to age characters or do a flashback, use the same actors and put them in silly wigs. And it's much funnier than any other choice.
Because I think what I liked about it was because it wasn't trying to like trick me. It wasn't trying to get me so immersed that I believed it to be true. It was, look at these effects and props and costumes we've made. And it felt like it was more calling attention to, we are a bunch of adults playing dress up and having fun, and you get to be part of it.
Yes.
Like, that's why I liked it. It felt like
it was welcoming.
I felt like I was at a Ren Fair. It felt like I was at a LARP event. Like, it was people playing pretend and having a really, really good time doing it and entertaining me.
How about the little fellas? We haven't talked enough about the puppetry.
Oh my
Because you talked about the creature design of the humans in
the giant
prosthetics.
Monsters. Yeah.
But talk about the puppets, the little fellas.
So there was a little bat creature, which was just a big eyeball with wings and little teeth. I loved him. He was so cute. He reminded me of Cam. Just in his, I don't know, in his attitude and his being. Like, I looked over at Cam and I was like, that's you. And then there were these little toad frog things that also looked a lot like you.
The establishing shots when we moved to... The movie is so funny with the color grading because you'll be in kind of a desert area and it's more yellow than the Mexico scenes in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it's like sepia tone to the max.
And then someone will announce we're in a swamp area and everything's green.
Yep, David Fincher movie.
You'll see just a little creature in kind of the bottom of the frame, like a very clearly kind of a puppet with a bunch of slime on it, frog with the silly eyes, who's just kind of like, you can tell there's a hand in there just moving him up and down a little. But everyone in the theater laughed and you could tell everyone was having a good time.
Yes.
And it set the tone. We knew all the information we needed to know and we continued having a good time. Like, the movie, I almost don't want to call it a straight comedy because it was more consistently entertaining than comedies ever are.
Yes, I know what you mean. Because even the moments that weren't funny or weren't meant to be funny, were incredibly entertaining, either in the drama or the character work or just what was happening on screen. Like, it was just the fantasy of it all. It was so fun.
It was a good humored adventure.
Yeah.
As much as it was kind of a slapstick comedy.
I mean, it felt a lot like a comic, like a 1980s like fantasy Conan the Barbarian comic. Like, that was, I think, this the charm element of it too, where it's a little over the top. It's a little unbelievable. It's very stylized, and you were having a really good time. Yeah.
Yeah. This as a double feature with Army of Darkness would be a hell of a Friday night.
Yeah, that would
as
be
many
really
Domino's
fun.
pizzas as you can order.
Absolutely.
Lock in.
Just pig out and have a great time. Yeah. I'm so glad we got to see this in the theater. Our audience really enjoyed it.
Yes,
Some of them
did.
a little too much, but the guy next to you was on a different level. But it was really, really
he
fun.
was spitting and spewing and snorting and snarling.
And like performative laughing. It was
Yeah.
a lot. But no, it was really fun. This movie was such a delightful experience. I said this, we recorded a Patreon episode earlier. There are so many movies that we see that if we didn't have the dang Alamo season pass, we would not see, because like no one can afford to see 100 movies a week. But with this pass, we can. And I'm so glad we saw it in the theater. Like, I'm so glad that we were able to dedicate time to going to see this on a Friday night. It was awesome.
And if you're here with us from our early days as a fantasy show, then this is a bat signal directly to you.
Go watch it.
You will have a ball of a time with Deathstalker.
So much fun.
The music's so funny.
It was really, really funny. Yeah. It was a great time.
You mentioned a Patreon episode a moment ago. What's that, Maggie?
Patreon. Yes, we have a Patreon. Did you know? The Patreon is a wonderful place to be. Over there, we put out 2 bonus episodes every single month. And most of what we put out over there are episodes of what we call the Breakfast Buffet series, which is a series where in each episode we cover multiple things altogether. Sometimes it's a bunch of movies. Sometimes it incorporates books or music or TV or a painting or other random things. And we talk about them individually, but also in conversation with one another. And sort of we talk about the overlaps and the crossovers and how our experience of one thing can inform our experience of another. It's a really fun series. We're like 36 or something episodes deep into that now. The episode we recorded this morning will go out later in November. But go check out the Patreon. It's $2 a month. It's a wonderful place to be. We love our patrons and we really appreciate your support.
And what if I was in the movie for some silly genre work with some dark humor involved?
Oh, then you might want to check out Lemon Tarts in Space, which is Cam's latest book. It is a light sci-fi dark comedy. It is Ridley Scott's Alien meets Monty Python. It is Friday the 13th meets Flubber. It is very similar in tone to Deathstalker.
This is kind of what I was going for.
But I think it goes higher. It's even funnier and even darker.
There's a lot more emotional work I'm doing.
Yeah, the range is a bit wider.
Sure.
But listener, it is so fun. Cam is such a talented author, and I really want y'all to check out his work. You can read this as a regular book, as regular people do, or if you want to be really cool, you can check out the audio drama that he created. He stars in it, as does our good friend who we mentioned earlier, Tristan. His acting is so good in this.
Captain Duncan Arugula himself.
Yes, this audio drama is really fun. You can listen to it pretty much anywhere you can find an audiobook. The links to that are in the description down below. Thank you very much for supporting the show through the Patreon, through supporting Cam's work, or through liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, rating, reviewing, etc., etc. Thank you all very much for listening. Please go check out Deathstalker wherever you can. It's so much fun. Let us know what you thought of the movie and our discussion, and we'll catch you here in just a few days with another brand new episode.